Fancy Pants is a series that I never really cared for. It was released well over a year before I was born, and when I did first play it, it was in 4th or 5th grade, and it never really left an impact. The character kind of stuck with me. I knew who he was, and I could absolutely point him out based on his silhouette, but as it stood, I never really cared. That's what I would be saying if I didn't get the entire series recently. Here's the thing. I recently played both the Fancy Pants Adventure Classic Pack and wasn't too impressed, but still had a little fun. But I fell in love with Super Fancy Pants Adventure. And as soon as I started playing, and honestly, even if it isn't even my top 5 or even top 20 games, I can honestly say that this game is top tier. And if you want a fun 2D platformer to play, then this is your game. As soon as I got the mechanics of the game down, I knew there was one thing I had to do. Make a challenge video. And that led me to today's big question. Is it possible to beat Super Fancy Pants Adventure without pressing left or right? The rules are simple, but kind of complex to explain. So, Rule 1. I cannot press left or right. There are some exceptions that I do want to explain right here because it leads to something very important. What is that important thing, you may ask? This is the hardest challenge that I've dared to attempt, and I'm not even being hyperbolic or funny. As of writing, I am not even halfway through the game, and I still think this is by far the hardest challenge I have dared to take on. For frame of reference, let's look at my other challenge videos. Pizza Tower Minimum Jump, while having some tedious moments, Crust Cove immediately comes to mind, there's nothing particularly difficult given the moves in my toolkit. Kirby and the Amazing Mirror Rightless, while difficult, did have some things that lessened the burn on the inability to turn right. Watch the video to see what I mean. Mario Kart Wii without items was by far the easiest, and I just thought it would be a fun series to create. Series as if it's more than one video. And finally, Bloons Tower Defense with only Tier 0 towers was pretty easy besides a few missteps caused by myself. All of those challenges were relatively simple, and Fancy Pants is no different. But herein lies the issue with this challenge. The easiest points are the easiest of any challenge, but the hard points genuinely make me want to gouge my eyes out. So this led me to the final conclusion I could make. To prevent myself from spending hours on every single trick if I mess it up, I am allowing myself a one-time completion checkpoint. Later in the video, you will understand why I implemented this, but a short explanation is that if I beat a section once, and I fall down to an earlier point, I am allowed to get up whichever way is easiest without adding to my count. Trust me, as I said, you will understand soon why I added this rule. But, point is, if I complete it once, that's all that matters. My script just cuts off there. The second rule is very small, but I can only start the game by pressing left or right on my controller for some reason. So, for obvious reasons, this case is I'm allowed to click, but I'm not allowed to hold right or left on my controller. I just need to start it, so I'm allowed to just click it. Also, left presses are less of a priority. It just makes the game harder for me. Now with those rules out of the way, I just want to do the usual. Thank you all for the huge boost in subscribers and my hatch video blowing the fuck up. I am so happy And I hope everyone who liked that video considers stopping by more often. So if you haven't, like, subscribe, or comment so this video gets out more. It would be much appreciated. But obviously, do it if you actually like the video. Okay, let's start the actual game. So, jumping in, Fancy Pants is on his bed, so I wake him up and begin the game. And I start to learn the moveset I will grow accustomed to later. As for the base movement options, allow me to explain what I have in my toolbox, the pros and cons of each option, and the general use over the course of the challenge. This might be a long explanation, so if you're well accustomed to the game and you kind of understand what I'm about to talk about, then skip to this timestamp. To kick us off, let me talk about my number one choice, and the one you will see the most, the slide. This is actually what inspired me to make this video, because I saw potential in it. So, how does it work? Very simple, as a matter of fact. All you have to do is initiate a jump and hold down. As you land on the ground, you will get a burst of momentum in the direction that you are facing. Okay, keep the word momentum in your brain. It will be a constant in this challenge. The pros of the slide are relatively obvious by what I have said, but this is easily our best option for quick speed and giving us momentum that we can maintain throughout the entire challenge. Consistent sliding makes us gain insane speed depending on the terrain, so keeping that momentum is very important. Thankfully, the slide has us covered. Unfortunately, this does lead us to the cons, and it kills its viability in a lot more cases than you'd think. Here's the thing about slide. It requires a surface that isn't slanted in the opposite direction. What I mean is that if the slope is pointed left and you are facing right, the slide will not happen after jumping. But you will do a different movement option, the roll. But back on the slide, while that is its main con, con 2 is a bit more clear, at least in a lot more situations, and that's that it has so much momentum that it can actually screw you over when doing tighter jumps, so you'll have to make do with what you have. The third con is just, it's really inconsistent with momentum carrying. That's all. Boy, that was a long explanation. I wonder what's next. Oh, god damn it! The pen/pencil is the most in one move. The X-Bind allows me to perform at least 6 different moves that vary in helpfulness, but that's not all. Given I have the swirls, I can purchase more moves. So, how does this help me? One word: precision. It's actually as simple as that. The normal slash is very good for getting into precise spots. This can also scale any wall, so long as you don't flip yourself upside down. Trust me, this is important for later tricks. Holding down X allows me to charge an attack, lunging me forward, dealing a lot of damage, knocking back foes, and obviously giving me a lot of distance. Both the charged and uncharged variants help me out a ton because they allow me to get movement in midair, which is obviously very good for me, and later on, as I discover, they are way more strong. But I'll save that for later. So yes, other than the slide, these are my most used tools. But that's not all. The slash has directional variants, that mainly being the upward one. The upward one is good, not just because it can hit from behind you, but also it has something that I recall is a problem for me. Oh, what's that? It cancels most momentum? Yup, indeed it does. Just for this one factor, you will have one of the best movement options in this game. Also, just so I don't have to go over this later, the spin attack and the downward thrust are completely useless for this challenge. I tested them on my completed save file and they did nothing for me. But I do get enough swirls to get the slide attack, which allows me to keep momentum a lot better. Just gonna say it's semi-useful, but more niche than anything. Just kind of giving my normal slide jump a hitbox. You know how it is. The third movement option is simply more just a backward slide that is a lot more inconsistent, but also carries momentum, I'd say, a lot better, but also can, like, screw you over if you jump too high and you just crash on the floor. That's the roll. The roll comes up a lot in this challenge. If you hold down on a steep enough slope, you'll start to roll, or if you jump off a steep slope and you're facing the opposite direction of the slope where it's going, then you'll start rolling, and the roll will carry your momentum. It's that simple. Moving on. This one is way more simpler. I have to thank the Fancy Pants developers for this, but wall jumping requires no directional input. Just press A at the wall, and bam, you jump off it. This is the only way to change direction in this game. And that's our moveset. Be sure to keep the term momentum in mind because that's the most important thing to this challenge. Okay, so back into this. The first room is easy, that's all, and soon enough I reached the most common roadblock, me being in the wrong direction. That's literally it, but this is where I figure out something. This ground right here is a slope in the direction I need to go in. So, after a few attempts and nearly writing off the possibility, I made it into the basement, but not enough distance, so that's a left press. Just kidding, Mama didn't raise a quitter, so I went back and bam, I made it! Here's the thing with entering different rooms. Your momentum will carry over, and sometimes they'll give you extra momentum. I don't know why they do this, but that allows this room to actually be clear. As for the basement, it's very twisty and turny. I'll tell you most of it is nullified due to easy wall access allowing me to turn around, and some rooms that gave me trouble like this spring into box combo. But relatively, this was fairly tame. There are some tough areas when reaching the purple part of the basement. The hardest of these rooms being this one, which looks like it might require a bunch of left and right presses just to get by, but I won't settle for that. So I used the momentum I could get, and after a bunch of failings, I got this result. The rest of the room isn't too bad, mostly just being wall jumping and momentum conserving till I get good results. This one jump was hard to get consistently, but overall wasn't too bad. But the next room is when we get introduced to the game's main gimmick, the pen. The pen is simply just a more buffed pencil, which allows me access to some very good tools that I will use later on. But I have to first save this cat, which isn't too bad. I just have to get some speed from this big slope. How do I get up? Well, actually, it's just a bunch of small slashes to climb my way up. And then I crouch down and tumble my way, getting enough speed to save Caboodle. And then I gain access to the aforementioned pen. This pen allows me to essentially skate on these sheets of paper in the background. I am allowed to go up and down, which allows me to get some sort of left/right movement, but overall, these walls are the bane of my existence, given all of them never require a left or right press, and are simply just really, really annoying. So, if you see these sheets, then just know they were always a pain to scale. The next room is a pain to do. Obviously, the paper is fucking with me, but also we have this little area. The wall is too high for me to jump over, so I have to use this momentum that I gain and just get up it. And this was a pain to do because momentum in this game is never consistent. So I need to get perfect momentum just for a chance at clearing this wall. Hopefully there isn't another area like this. But yeah, I get enough height to wall jump to the other wall and finally get over. Then these 3 platforms show up later on, and yeah, they're difficult because they fall as soon as you graze them, so I have to get the right momentum while also being fast, just so I have a chance at the sheet next to it. And this took more time to do, but I barely got enough momentum and finally left the basement. Thankfully, that's done, and I can move on to the outside world, which is when this challenge really gets hard. As if it wasn't already hard before. The basement requires 0 left presses and 0 right presses. Let's go!
Kara, you stupid bitch. I'll gas the blast. Wait, Gaster?
I'm gonna level with you all. This area broke me. Remember how I said this was my hardest challenge yet? This area was enough to confirm that to me, and is the reason I added the one-time rule. You may be a bit confused, shocked even, but allow me to explain why this was with this first room. This first room starts off straightforward, and then I'm introduced to this big curve, which I normally can't get past, but after some fiddling around, you can just barely get enough momentum to pass. But it's not that simple, because if you aren't, then the next section will require a right press. So how do you pass it? Well, first, as I said, you will have to use the momentum jump, which requires you to slide and jump at proper times, and if you mess it up, you'll have to spam slash on the curve until you are turned around by the curve, which, yes, is actually another way to turn, which I will get into later because I'm ranting. So, when you turn on the curve, you will have to continue down that path just to do another slash turn, which then you can attempt again. Great, wonderful. So when you make it past the curve, you are in the stick. And it's quite difficult to get out of it, but when you do, you have to jump towards this challenge door. Do not go in it. It will make you face left. Go past it, hug this wall, jump, don't wall jump, and you gain leftward momentum when you hold down, so you start rolling. You can conserve this momentum through every single jump until this rock, where if you do a perfect jump, you will have enough momentum and get a high enough jump to make it onto this platform, and when you do that, you are done with this one section. Not the room, a small section of this room. This took me 42 minutes just to get past once after implementing the one-time rule. This is why I added a one-time rule for frame of reference, because this one small area took me so long. If you are mad at me for this, then I am truly sorry. Please try doing this yourself. If you want to understand what true pain is like, it just takes you doing this. This is also why I said momentum would be so important. As I said, momentum is not a consistent thing. You can go faster or slower depending on where you slide, when you jump, or just some random third factor. This adds a level of RNG to the challenge, but not RNG in the traditional sense of RNG, in the sense of, how am I supposed to recreate any of these if I just so happen to fuck up once? So please, cut me some slack and just let me have this, because with this one-time rule, it still took me 9 hours of recording footage, and probably longer if you take it into account testing things and other nonsense that was relevant to the challenge. But anyways, this room is, after the first section at least, is surprisingly kind of simple. Simple in comparison to the first trick at least. There's these 2 springs that I thought would require a left press, but shockingly no. I was able to pull this maneuver, which made the room possible. The next room is cake, and kept me in a level head after the hell that came before. Only one relatively hard part, just requiring me to hit a sick wall jump. The next room was also easy, no cool tricks here. Unfortunately, the room after wasn't as merciful. I'm gonna have to be completely honest with all of you. This room is the first impossible room. Remember the one section that I ranted about earlier? That big wall curve that was just barely possible? This is an impossible wall curve. And it's because of the pull afterwards, making it so even if I jumped on the pull, I would still be facing left, and it's just not going to be possible. And even if it was, having a slim chance of even being possible, there's a giant slope right before it, just to rub salt in the wound, because it'll make it impossible for my right-facing momentum to even carry over. I kept trying, but I'm at least 90% sure this room is completely impossible. So that adds the first left press to the count. But that's not all for this room, because as I trekked forward, this area showed up. And, well, you cannot get up these platforms unless you have rightward momentum, and even after, you still need to press left to continue down the path. Now, if these platforms were solid, I could hang on them and then change directions like that, but unfortunately, they are semi-solids, so I can't do anything. But I would be lying if I said I wouldn't at least save a directional press. That left press is completely impossible to avoid, but I felt like I could absolutely avoid a right press. So I tried, and the solution to my problem was actually quite simple. And it's actually a tool I'll use a lot more. Ledge clinging is a very good tool. As long as the platform is solid and isn't curved, you can ledge cling. And this is another way to change directions, although it is a bit finicky to land on the ledge when you're on the platform itself, but it is completely possible. Jumping will make you jump as if you were standing on solid ground, but if you're fast, you can press down and jump, and you will perform a wall jump, which will completely nullify the even think about pressing right. I was happy about making it to the next area, but then I realized I can't get further because I'm stuck facing left. Thankfully, these spiders start walking towards my area, so after redoing this section a few times, I was able to flip my direction and get the hell out of there. The next room has tricky platforming, but that's all, nothing to worry about. And we are on to one of the last rooms, which is possible, maybe. Okay, here's my predicament. Big wall to the left, there's a slope, you can build up enough momentum to pass it, but for the life of me, I could not change my direction without pressing left to get a backflip off the ledge, or whatever the top of this slope is called. Getting a backflip will allow me to slash swap my directions, similar to what was happening with the curves and how I was able to swap directions there. So I'm going to count this as a left press, but if any of you want to try this, then go ahead. I might go back to it and make an update video, but as it stands, I will count this as a left press for the time being. Anyways, after this room, there's a cave, which is relatively easy, and finally, I get to the final room, which is mostly just fighting and not running. So we can finally say goodbye to the outdoors and move on to Bathtub Tower. The outskirts, or outdoors, or whatever you want to call it, requires 0 right presses, but in turn, requires 3 left presses.
Luigi is my brother. Timid but reliable. To repeat the pipe, I'm an ex.
Bathtub Tower is the shortest area in the game. In turn, it has the first boss, which is actually hard. Like, not being ironic, it was genuinely a struggle. I'll explain what I mean. The boss has 2 hands. One hand will slam or swipe, and you have to beat the hand, so the guy will get mad, slam his fist, that will spawn platforms that you need to jump up to break a stalactite that will kill him. The problem is the way I'm facing, because the hand will always end up behind me after a slam, and the swipe is hard for me to jump over, and can also end up behind me. There isn't much to say further, just that I struggled for like 40 minutes and eventually got to God Run and killed the boss. This boss is hard, but overall, I have not much else to say. Really, just kill the thing, damn it. Killing the boss gives me access to the ink gun. It's really useful for killing tougher to reach enemies and making platforms, but overall comes up less than like anything else, so ugh. I guess since this chapter is so short, I'll explain something that you might have noticed. My HP in swirls. If you've been paying attention, you might have noticed that my HP pool keeps getting bigger, and my swirl count is starting to vary a lot. Well, that's because the bathtub tower introduces the ice cream stand, which simply gives you new attacks or just increases your HP or attack power. This challenge, I invested most of my swirls into getting my HP as high as I possibly can, so I can tank more attacks from enemies. It's really that simple. But yeah, if my swirls randomly disappear, just assume I bought HP or power in the shop. Bathtub Tower required 0 left presses and 0 right presses. So let's move on to... Tree Pirate Village is like the most random area in the game, having some of the easiest rooms and then hitting you with a truck 4 seconds before you can even react to it. The first room is relatively simple to start, just having some interesting jumps and tricks like these poles, which can just be dealt with by holding slash before landing on them, giving you a burst of momentum in that direction that you are facing. And then we have this wall, which first looking at it looks impossible, but no, it's actually fully possible. And all you need to do is see how I do it. Then you can get a momentum wall jump, land on the pole, and slash your way to the spring. The next room, I got this sick jump here that I could not recreate. But I mean, come on, look at this. This one jump saved me so much confirmation time. Nothing more to say about this room. The next room is easy for the most part. This one sheet was a problem, but other than that, there's just pole slashing for the win. What a clean streak. I was feeling so good. This challenge was starting to become simple and second nature. Finally, a break from all the difficulties. I was then shot 57 times, because look at what I have to figure out next. Before I talk about and say whether I could even do it or not, let me tell you how long it took me to make my conclusion. 45 minutes just to figure out if a trick was possible. 45 whole minutes just to figure it out. Oh, but Carbon, 45 minutes isn't a lot. I can hear you. Don't worry, I'm inside your home. Please take this into perspective. On speedrun.com, world record holder is someone by the name of Pepperoni? I'm gonna say Pepperoon. They have a time of 18 minutes and 41 seconds. They could beat the game 2 times before I could figure out if this section was possible. Even crazier, I did my own mock speedrun. Not recorded and only timed with my stopwatch. And it took me a bit under 40 minutes to beat the game. So I could beat the game in the time it took me to figure out this one section. Why is this section even difficult, you might be thinking to yourself? Well, young viewer, allow me to explain why. It's literally just because of the direction I'm facing. This section is so hard because I need to be facing right on this platform. You can't wall jump because that's going to make you face left, and you cannot get enough momentum going right to make it to the platform. Despite enemy hits changing your direction, you cannot change directions when an enemy projectile hits you, and many more stipulations that just make this room and section a nightmare. It was attempt after attempt after promising attempt, and I was so close to declaring this area completely impossible, adding to our right count before this happened. No left or right presses. Good. What's next? Are you kidding me? Thankfully, this wasn't as bad as it looks. You think it would be impossible because the spikes, but no, actually. You can just barely short hop slash, and eventually, after much trial and error, I hit that shit and moved on. The rest of the room was cake, and the next room wasn't too bad, just me being bad at jumping onto moving platforms. Anyways, cue to depressing music.
My name is Cool Kid. I'm 5 years old. I'm a part of an evil Roblox game.
I said depressing music! I won't try to bait you here. This is legitimately an impassable wall. you have to hold right to cling on the wall. Here's the thing, I got lucky with the wall jumps not requiring directional input. But in turn, this section is impossible because these walls require you to cling on them. The only way this room would be possible rightless is if I could just cling with momentum, but I'm pretty sure in this case, I just can't. Which adds not just a right press, but also a left press to the count. We were so close, yet so far. Unfortunately, the final room isn't difficult and just requires proper positioning. So if it wasn't for that, Tree Pirate Village requires one left and one right press, to the dismay of me.
SpongeBob's Sippy Cup. Fill your sippy cup with boiled cabbage and drink up.
No, thank you!
SpongeBob luggage tag. Scribble down your personal information and pack your bags full of boiled cabbage. Now with your name and address on the tag, your luggage can be returned to you if it gets lost.
Volcano approach. Oh boy, volcano approach! I love volcano approach! Listen carefully, because I will repeat myself at least 40 times throughout this chapter. If you think any of these chapters were painful for me to beat, well, imagine that, but multiplied by at the very least 3, because boy, do I have some fun for you. If you like watching me get comically angry at random things like a video game, then I am happy to say I will be overacting my anger here, because it's really funny. But in all seriousness, this was one area ruined me. Like, Volcano Approach is the equivalent of getting stood up at your wedding by your 6'4" suit-wearing gentle dom girlfriend because she got cold feet. That's how it felt trying to beat Volcano Approach with the least amount of left and right presses. Am I being hyperbolic? Oh, absolutely. No doubt in my mind. But was it the hardest part of the challenge? Yes! Yes, it was! It absolutely was! Before I get into that, I forgot to say, what I got for beating the Horde in the world prior is the skill to air dash. And it does exactly what you think. Dash horizontally in the direction that you're facing. This gives good momentum, airtime, and plenty of other things. Unfortunately, it relies on ink charge, and in all honesty, just think of it having infinite charge because the charge is more of a hindrance rather than a genuine problem because it's just kind of annoying to manage around. So, if you don't mind, suspend your disbelief as far as you can for me. Thanks. This world has an easy start. Literally just go forward and that's really it. I will go over some things that this world has that pretty much no other world does. This world is filled, and I mean filled, with Kirby Triple Deluxe-esque background moving. You kind of jump into the background and you end up in the foreground sometimes. This is done via springs, or the world's second gimmick, portals. Portals aren't particularly difficult to deal with, thankfully, but there are points where they are something, I'll tell you. We'll get into that later. But overall, not bad. So, what's the second issue? Well, that's another simple thing to answer. Level geometry. Okay, to get the full scope of what I mean, and why this is a problem, let me compare a section of this world to a section from an earlier world. Just so you can understand the full scope of this. It all makes sense, trust me. This is the first impossible area of Volcano Approach, and is quite difficult to read at a glance. You jump into a portal, and then you are in touch with the background. Unfortunately, your sight is being blocked by the foreground, so there's some guesswork involved to begin with, so keep that in mind when trying to pass this section. Another issue is if you end up facing right at any point, there's a reset necessary because you're unable to turn left afterwards because of the lack of anything in this area besides this one enemy. After this, you have to scale up a tall slope, which is hard. Then you jump over these rotating circles, which can absolutely fuck you over if you're slow. And finally, you have to land on this spring and jump into the background, in which you are blocked off from progress without any directional input. Impossible, right? Well, no, actually, that was all bait. What you actually need to do is way more complex. So let me try to break this down into 3 chunks. The entrance, the trick itself, and the exit. The entrance requires you to gain enough speed so you could hop off to do a BMFSSAD. This is short for backwards momentum flip/swap air dash, which flips you right and lands you on the challenge door platform, which I cannot stress enough. Do not enter the door. Now, time for the trick itself. If you are positioned in the right spot, which took me some time because it's hard to get the right spot, the trick consists of a simple slide, then you jump as soon as you slide, and when you are at the peak of your jump, you use your air dash and you will land on the spring platform, which removes any right or left presses from this room. The exit is simply getting on the spring and leaving the room with the easy tricks. That was one single trick. And if you forgot, I was comparing this to a trick from an earlier world, comparing it to the world prior with its moving platform room. This just requires some quick thinking and just knowing where you and the platform are. This is in comparison to an area where you have to air dash to a platform off to the right. I think you could see the stark difference. And if you look at most of the other tricks that I at least attempted to explain earlier in the challenge, you'll notice that this is a lot more complex. And yes, I just threw stuff at the wall to see if it worked. And it did, so yeah. This is what Volcano Approach is like for the entire challenge. For frame of reference, painful section after painful section. This area looks impossible, but if you remember, you can ledge cling to make it possible. And then the rest of the room is nerve-wracking momentum holding until you can make it to the door, which leads you to the next impossible section. Unfortunately, this one I'm pretty sure is impossible unless you get God momentum. Here's how it goes. Get to the foreground with the spring. You are facing the right, so you need to flip directions. And the easiest way to do that is with the challenge door. So enter and then exit, and you will face the left direction. Doing this, you will now have to traverse the area facing left, which is a good thing. What is bad, though, is this single fucking portal. Dilemma is no consistency. That's all it really takes. Unless you get God placements and God momentum, this area is completely impossible. So, say it with me, guys. 1 left press!
Game over, man!
Thankfully, a backflip saves me from having to press right. This took me 15 minutes. No other left or right presses for the room, thankfully. Just requiring some nice momentum conservation and some finesse, but overall, nothing to really worry about. Okay, the next room is one of the craziest in the challenge, so put some fire music. Okay, so starting out, this first area is actually done with some good momentum holding, because if you're fast enough, you can just jump over all of your problems. If you didn't register it, this is possible because of the rotating platform, which gives more momentum than usual because it's moving, and also it can push you down because it's a slope. This portal was weirdly placed, and at first I wasn't sure how to approach it, but then it struck me. Momentum for the win! Speed is the name of the game, so you can make it there fast and go into the portal. The next area is a big fucking wall, which I was convinced was impossible, but somehow, and I can't believe this is real, this shit worked. I'm not sure how it worked, but fuck it, sure, I'll take it. Unfortunately, this next area requires a left press. Very sad, but true, so that just adds to the count.
You kissed your dad in the mouth?
Then I grind on some rails and get the heck out of there. And the next room was a pain, but I'm not gonna over-explain it. I've been over-explaining everything, I'm just sick of this. I could really go into detail, but this room pisses me off to no end. Just know that it's fully possible without pressing left or right, but it was a pain to get through. The only reason I skipped the room prior is because it was possible, and 2, this room is somehow worse. This first jump isn't so hard. Just get speed and hold it until you get to the portal. Yay! And then we get to the impossible area in the room. Yes, the first impossible area. These springs are just impossible to deal with and require me to count with me, folks. 1 right press, 1 left press, then followed up by a 2nd right press.
You're no fun!
Although it might be possible to do it with just 1 right and 1 left, I wasn't able to save a right, so I'm very sorry for that. The final impossible section of the room, you can just pass it without a left press, but you need to press right so you can wall jump this wall, and then you can finally get to the easy boss, and you are done with Volcano Approach, which leaves this area with a total of... Screaming crowd, please! 3 left presses and 3 right presses. Awful. Just terrible. What could possibly be next?
Você está no canal Simpson Gamer.
Simpson Gamer.
Você está no canal Simpson Gamer. Esse canal é bom demais. Você está no canal Simpson Gamer.
All of this footage was recorded the morning after the pain that was Volcano Approach. So when I say I was pumped and happy the whole way through this, I'm actually not lying. I genuinely loved the volcano section. It's difficult, but also fun. What can I say? I love when things get more streamlined. Anyways, this area was difficult, but I wouldn't say it was harder than Volcano Approach. Volcano Approach was pain, and it was like getting stood up at your wedding. Volcano Interior was like you got stood up at your wedding, and then your 6'4" gentle dom girlfriend comes barging into the wedding hall in the most beautiful dress you've seen, sweeping you off your feet. Genuinely, I had so much fun doing this, so let's get into it. The first room required some momentum conservation in the beginning to land on this platform. Then, you have to get on this moving rock, which you can easily ledge cling to, and continue forward. More normal jumps before a big battle begins. Easy. Need I say more? The jumps after the section were a bit weird, but fine overall. What about this wall? Looks impossible. That's what I thought initially, but given attempts, you can kind of just do this for some reason. I don't know why it works like that, but sure man, I'll take it. If I had to guess, there's a frame window where the slide off doesn't lower your jump, or your jump is just barely high enough to reach the pole. It's weird, but I'll continue on. Next area is easy, blah blah blah. And then we are faced with an impossible area. Or at least I think it's impossible. It's not the jump. I mean, you could see it's not hard to perform. What makes it impossible is the pole right here. It might be obvious, but humor me here because you cannot turn around on a pole like this. That's literally the only reason this is impossible and requires a right press.
You're no fun!
I can't particularly think of a reason how this would be possible, and the only way I think this would be possible requires a left press and maybe getting a flip/swap. I don't know. I couldn't get it. If you guys want to try it, I don't really care. I'm not trying to get it again. Okay, now allow me to be very clear. This is the only time I want to be clear here. I chose to hold down right because the next section is, I want to say way easier, but might only be possible when holding it down. So I'm bringing back the amazing mirror roll. That's all. The next room isn't particularly difficult as much as it is annoying. These jumping guys mess me up so often, but they are literally only messing with me because overall this section is easy. This spring section is possible with good timing. I thought this falling platform section would be hard, but I got a 4th try. The next room had some weird sheet stuff, but overall wasn't too taxing. The next room is one of the harder ones. So, I think I need to explain this one. Coming in, you have to slide and go onto the moving platform. Be quick because these falling platforms could mess you up after the moving one. But getting past those leads you to a sheet where you slide onto this wall, jump off it, and then get to the other side. Getting onto the other wall, if you get a good wall jump, you'll land on this pole or this grind rail. The pole is actually better as you can kind of compose yourself, but as long as you get to either, you'll be fine. You grind on these rails for a bit, no issue. Now, listen carefully. Now, I'm sure most of you, when you get to the red pole, you'll be inclined to jump to the wall and then wall jump off it. Do not do that. You will have enough distance to get to the wall, but you won't have enough distance to get back to the pole. So the actual method here is before you reach the pole, you want to mash jump. So when you do jump, you'll jump to the right and land safely on the yellow pole. These next 3 blue hangers may look intimidating, but you can cross them with a charged slash, so they're not too bad. Air dash the final jump, and you have cleared the room. The next room looks really easy. I also just thought it would be funny if I did the challenge door. It's possible without left or right, if you were curious. It took me 20 minutes, but I don't know what to say. These 2 rising platforms look tricky, but if you play it safe, you'll end up on this moving platform, which will lead you to this pole section. The pole section looks impossible, but you gain so much speed that it's not even hard. You can just barely make it onto the other pole though. Reaching this jumpy block was a bit of an annoyance, but overall not bad, just requiring a charge slash. But unlike the spring area, I knew that this, despite looking impossible, wasn't actually impossible because of ledge clinging coming to save me once again. Slash to the edge of the thing, jump to get some height, then air dash on the second bouncy platform to clear the room. Now, no lies, this was legitimately the hardest room in the volcano, and that's because of one jump. This area may not look hard, and that's what I thought. But attempt after attempt after attempt, I couldn't successfully do it. The idea was simple, ledge cling to the left wall, but for some reason, I could never get enough height to make it, no matter where I jumped it. It just never worked. I even got attempts where I landed on the platform to the right with the pit. But it was so odd, I just kept at it, because I knew it would be possible. And I was so close to giving up. That was until this happened. Yeah, I made it all complicated. All it took was a simple roll to save the day. Nothing else was really that difficult. These jumps, possible with good positioning. This curve, possible with an air dash. And there I was, at the end of the game. And now it's time for us to fight this thing. I'm not gonna humor you here. It was really fucking easy. I get knocked off the table after beating it and enter the paper portal, and the end was on. So is it possible to beat Super Fancy Pants Adventure without pressing left or right? No. But who cares? I was able to pull out some crazy stuff, and in all honesty, I didn't even think half of the things would work. But it did. From the Outer Lands first section to Volcano Reproach's weird jump right here, I was able to absolutely not use left or right throughout 99% of this game. And you know what? I'm happy with my results. Speaking of results, let's get into them. In the basement, I didn't have to press left or right once. World 2 was a bit of an oddball, requiring 3 left presses and none on the other side. World 3 was the easiest, clocking in at 0 on both ends. World 4 giving me the first right press and adding 1 to our left-sided army. World 5 stood me up at my wedding, giving me 3 left and 3 right presses, giving the most for potential saving. And finally, World 6 left me with a loving marriage, only requiring 1 right press that can potentially be saved with a left press. So yeah, it isn't possible to beat the game with my stipulation, but it did require a total of 7 left presses and 5 right presses. That counter is 1 number off of judgment, so I'll cherish this result while I can. And now I can finally, and I mean finally, wrap up this already long video. I'm sure at this point you're absolutely sick of me rambling, and to be honest, I'm sick of writing this script. But hey, no one has done this challenge, so I thought I'd do it myself. I strive to be original in my challenge videos, rather than trekking the same ground some other guy, bigger than me, has already done. So, being the first person to attempt this challenge is kind of insane to me. If you made it to this point, I would really just like to thank you for sticking around throughout this entire video, because it means a lot to someone as small as I am. And if you would be so inclined, and if you enjoyed what I put out, I would highly recommend you subscribe, like, or just leave a comment. I don't really mind, telling me what you liked about the video. If you didn't like it, then feel free to share why in the comments below. I strive to put out videos that anyone can really get into, so if I did that for you, I am so glad. And if you want more of me, I would highly recommend you watch my Found on the Tape video, or if you are more dedicated, check out my Sparky Does Things Season 1 playlist, which compiles all of my scripted videos. But that's all on my end. If there's one thing to take away from this video, it isn't a special lesson. It's buy Super Fancy Pants Adventure. Please, I promise it's a really good game. This video is not sponsored. But that's gonna be all from me. My name is Carbon. Me and my 6'4" gentle Dom wife are going to have some fun. Okay, I'm gonna see myself out. Goodbye! Next video will be out in a much better time frame. Please trust me, I'm not a lying idiot. Please. Also, thank you for 850 subscribers. Thank you so much. I love you all. Bye, 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 bye.
Simpson Gamer, Simpson Gamer, Simpson Gamer.